let's go into the Q&A session now.
So if I understand, you need to know if if our analytical instrument will give you directly the amounts to use in your bakery for your process. Well, that is usually not the case, because with analytical instrument, you will analyze flour with water and that's it. So it is not a complete formulation. The desired consistency the target consistency with an analytical tool is not necessarily the same as yours, but usually they are very well correlated. So if it absorbs more with an analytical instrument, it will absorb more on your production line. So it is a simple correlation to make.
So let's take a step back to Lena. When bakers run water absorption tests, do they need to calculate first or just titrate it in?
Well, they can just put any number. If you're speaking about, well, mainly all of those tools, the MixLab, for example, you can just put any water absorption, something that you know is not too far away, let's say 60%, if you know it's usually around 60%, and then you will have a consistency recording. If the consistency is higher to the target, then you know you have to put more water. And here, the software of the MixLab will help you calculate exactly how much water you need to put in to reach the target. And the same way other.
Right. And with that information, correct me if I'm wrong, then the baker can adjust, maybe usually understanding the process and the formulation plus 1% or plus 2% more. Yeah, because usually when you add, things like fiber or, even like cultured wheat, you're going to have to increase the calculation.
Yeah.
So some manual calculation needs to be added to the actual MixLab results.
Yeah, to adjust to your specific process.
Correct.
That's it. That's a good question. As we have said, there are different components in the flour. You have damaged starch, you have fibers, you have proteins, and all of those components, they absorb water. So they will contribute to the global water absorption capacity. But two flours may have the same water absorption capacity, but different amount of each component. Like they might absorb the same level of water, but one is mostly because of the damaged starch, and the other is mostly because of the gluten. And the thing is, those components, they will not have the same impact on the dough. The gluten will play on the elasticity, on the extensibility, but the damaged starch will mostly play on the stickiness, on the tenacity, but also on the stickiness of the dough. And fibers will play on the consistency mostly. So you can have same water absorption, but different results online. And this is why just knowing water absorption amount is not enough usually to have a good control.
I wanted to add to that too, that the MixLab mixes the dough and reports the other dough characteristics that you can see on the report. So water absorption is only one portion of that. Okay. So yeah, water absorption gives you the result, right? Then you got to look at the tail, and then you look at how it cooks, right? So this is a nice part about the MixLab is you get to see the entire mixing and baking process from a report. So not only does it give you water absorption does not dictate how your dough works in the mixer, okay? It's the actual MixLab and how it mixes in the MixLab report that dictates what you see in your mixer. And if you run enough MixLabs, you will pretty much understand which part of that curve is going to relate to your dough dividing, going to relate to your proofing, going to relate to your baking, right? So that's that's the thing you need to understand and learn more. We've got lots of information on the Mixolab and rheology of doughs on BAKERpedia, so go check those out. It's everything to do with that. There is no one solution. Okay, so let's start with the protein quality of the flour, because that's really important. A good year, Lena, is a break, right? The break and shred, that's a year. A good year would depend on the quality of the flour. You must have good protein quality. You must have the right kind of consistency of the dough. Something is going to open, brick, and shred really good if you give it a good oven spring. So all the theories for oven spring needs to be there. The yeast need to be alive. It has to have a later yeast kill. You know, the steam has to be there. You know, all these different factors. And also you must have a good technique. Like if you cut, like if you're like me, I don't know how to score bread, I'm not going to have a good year. You know, it has to be scored in a nice little 45-degree angle. You know, it's just consistent. And then the year would look really nice, right? So only expert bakers can actually give a good year. So it's all those factors, you know, it's not just one thing. Like I can't go in and just say, I'm going to reduce yeast kill and increase the steam in the oven and you'll get a good year. No, that's not it. It's all these things in combination. And actually, it's a really skilled artisan baker who knows his flour at his or her flour at the mixer, know how it feels, give it the proper proof, make sure there's enough yeast activity left at oven spring, a good steam, a good score. All those factors that a retail baker, an expert retail baker does will give you a beautiful year. I would start at your bottleneck. Right. So go into a bakery. I go to a bakery. I see the bottleneck either at the divider or at the proofer or at the oven. So you got to look at your bottlenecks first. Those are the places where automation and equipment is desperately needed. Also, sometimes it comes down to, you know, which station does your employee don't want to work at, right? Because they will choose for you. They will decide, I don't want to work at that station. So those are the kind of decisions that you need to counter and understand and examine. And you know, the A&A baking team is so expert at this, and they will come in and they will look at your process and help you understand, you know, where your cash flow is, what you're able to afford, and then implement a solution for you. So you don't need to be an expert in automation to understand what equipment you need to put in first. You just need to call A&A Baking Solutions. Well, first, I'm going to let Lena talk about the enzyme part of things. What can you examine with the enzyme part? Because I think this is a huge enzyme issue.
Well, it might be, but I don't know really, because I'm not sure about what kind of flour. It's always multifactorial, but here there is something that might be interesting about the protein quality as well. Because usually when we add vital wheat gluten, we test the vital wheat gluten, but we test only one part of the vital wheat gluten, let's say. We will test how it impacts the dough development time and the dough stability and those kind of things. But we don't know much about the protein resistance to high temperature. And this is something that we can have access to with the Mixolab. With the mixer lab, you can have access to a part of the curve, which is really completely dedicated to the protein quality when the temperature goes up. And this and this might sometimes be an indication of a collapse. Like if you see that the protein doesn't really resist to deformation while the temperature is high, that might be an indication of collapsing. But then, of course, you have other parameters at play, such as amylase activity as well. And this is also something that you can control with the same device. And so here, I would say, do not hesitate to contact us. We might be able to help.
Yeah. And I would like to say, take a look at your enzyme activity in the flour and your COAs, if you have one, to make sure it's not an enzyme problem. Adding coarser flour, it's not really the solution. But what you're doing with the coarser flour is you're actually reducing the enzyme activity of the other flour. That's why you're getting some relief from there. In terms of crisp has everything to do with the protein quality of your flour. The better protein quality, the higher protein levels, you're going to get a crisper crust. So this is why heart rate spring wheat, is one of the best wheats to make bread with, because the protein quality is good, strong, and very high. And that's why you get a lot of crisp with those kinds of flour. So hopefully, hopefully we are able to suggest to you to look into the quality of your flour and to understand how you could bring in a better flour for your problem right now. No, that's no standards. And in the US, if you don't, the US it's like the playing field for any baker. It's like there are no standards how a bread product should look like, other than the moisture level. But basically it's, I guess, most of the size, it's like 16 ounces or 1 pound loaves, and that's whatever that comes out. And this is the nicest thing about artisan bread. It's whatever is hand shaped, so this is a 16 ounce loaf, and it's a round loaf, and it's whatever that comes out from the proofer. There is no specified or regulated width or height or or depth of product. So if I was a baker and I'm trying to upscale, what I would do is go to the fresh bakery deli part of your grocery store and look at what's available right there and what is the standard, so that's where I would start. The answer is yes. And we do offer that service in terms of support and consultation. Send an email to support@bakerpedia.com and we will look into that for you.
Yeah, we did that too. So if you ever need additional support, just do not hesitate.
Ooh, I like Insta problems. So it's actually not a bad thing to expand while scoring. It's not a bad thing at all. Okay. And also it really depends on the dough temperature. The warmer the dough, the more yeast activity that is. And when you score, it's immediately, lets out the gas. Whereas maybe the picture on Insta, the video on Insta has a cooler dough. And basically it's, maybe sitting around in a cooler room. I don't know, so either ways, I think it's fine. If it actually expands on the floor while you score, you want to look into reducing your yeast level rather than reducing your proof. Okay. That way you get more of the expansion in the oven. You know, you don't want it to expand too much on the floor. You want it to expand in the oven. So if your bread like really scores and expands on the floor, then you know, you're going to get not much of a year, not much of a brick and shred definition in the oven. I hope that helps. Oh yeah, I always recommend most bakers to look into dried sours to improve the flavor of the bread. Sometimes these dried sours bring an extra dimension to the sour, not just making it more sour, but actually gives it more a cheesy taste or an alcoholic taste. So I'm always, you know, a big proponent for those those flours. I would try anywhere starting from 3%. Don't go beyond 10%. So I think you're going to see a huge effect on your dough rheology at 10%. So you don't want to affect any of that. But I would start with 3 to really have a significant impact on the taste. Does the MixoLab have a solution to understand bread staling?
Yes, absolutely. Basically, during the MixoLab test, the temperature goes up to simulate the baking stage, and then it goes down. And so it's a little bit like you simulate what's going on at the end after the oven part, so with the end product. And here what we will see is the starch retrogradation. Basically, if the starch retrogradation is high, then the shelf life will be limited. On the other end, if it's very long, then the shelf life will be longer. So this is a balance to find, and that will depend on many parameters of the flour, on if it's containing damaged starch, if the amylase activity is high or not. Then you can think about adding, of course, additives and see their impact on the stalling part, but that will depend if you're clean label or not. So there are many solutions, but also many constraints, and that would really depend on your specific situation.
Correct. So I would like to add to that if you're looking at ingredient solution like an amylase or an enzyme solution, please use the MixoLab to really understand the dosage and how long it's going to extend your shelf life. Okay. Secondly, look at your baking process and actually do a thermal profile, right? So go to our thermal profiling page and understand thermal profile. If your existing bake is above 20% arrival times, that means you're drying out the bread. So don't dry out the bread, cut back the arrival times, and you can cut back arrival times through lowering temperatures or increasing front zones of the baking time. Don't limit yourself only to ingredient solution, but process solutions as well. So in this case, I would look at thermal profiling. I would look at cooling. A lot of upscaling artisan bakers are not aware that when you leave your bread on the shelf, the cooling area to cool until your packaging crew comes through, you're going to be drying out your bread. So cool until internal temperature of 100 degrees Fahrenheit or less. Once you get to that point, slice it and package it. Don't wait longer than that. It usually takes about an hour or so for a regular, sourdough bread like that. When you slice, when you cool it to 100 and you slice it and then you bag it, the shelf life of this product is going to be longer as well. In terms of the mold and mold products, also the longer this sits out in your bakery, the more mold spores is going to collect on the bread and the faster your bread's going to mold. So, cooling, if anything, if right now you've got one thing to change is to change your cooling process and make sure that the bread does not stay out too long before you package it, So I hope this helps. We have come to the end of the webinar. Lena, do you have any last words?
Not so much, just that we would love to learn more about artisan breads with you. So again, if you have any projects or any requirements, please feel free to contact us, and we would be happy to work together and learn more about those products.
Great. Now, all of you have Lena's contact information in terms of website and where to go for rheological and flower quality help. You can always reach us and A&A Baking through our website and support@bakerpedia.com. So thank you, everyone, for coming and being so engaged in this process. And we will see you soon. Bye-bye.